We have just a few short announcements. I just handed a mail-in envelope to a couple of our musicians who, like musicians are, didn't show up with any money today.
We play for food. I'm sorry.
Yeah. They think they can talk their way out of it, but they can't. And there's more of them up here. If any of you want, if you feel like you didn't pay enough, or if the Holy Spirit's telling you, give the rest of your money to these people, you can grab one of those and mail something in. But as you know, we don't do this for the money. And so the only reason I'm mentioning is God said some of you could use the help of being generous. So I'm not going to name you. You know who you are. The recording of this, as always, will be available on YouTube and Facebook. Don't take the badges home, even if we didn't give you a lanyard. We need them back. If you want some prayer, individual prayer afterwards, Tom Bayer, where's Tom? Raise your hand, Tom. See Tom at the end. He's got some people that are lined up that know very well how to do individual prayer, and it's one of the things that we do at the prayer breakfast here. Our next Zechariah prayer breakfast will be on July 27th, if the date's okay with our speaker. We haven't ironed that out yet. And the next one after that on October 19th of 24. And all vicars this year. Yay. So with no further ado, that's everything that I had. I'd like to introduce the new vicar for the Southern Vicariate. I've already gotten that wrong once today. Father Lydon. Please give him a warm welcome.
Gentlemen, just for a stand break, why don't you all just stand for a moment? Let's just take a break with our bodies and get out of the seating position. A little bit of a maniac on that. I don't like to sit too long ever. So I encourage you to stand, stretch a little bit, maybe stretch, You all stretched out? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there we go. There we go. One of my mentors at St. Dominic Savio, who's here today, really encouraged me to stretch a lot, and I didn't obey him, and now I'm paying for it. It's important to stretch every day, and more than just for a minute. Well, why don't you have a seat now at this point, and maybe you can stretch a little bit later down the line, or go for a walk, move your bones around. Along those lines in kind of a kidding way, but also serious. I just went to the orthopedic doctor. I'm 69, by the way. I just turned 69 this past week. And my body's feeling it. So I went to the orthopedic guy, Dr. Chabot, and he informed me that my L4, L5, and S1 on my back are in trouble, especially my L4 and L5. I have degenerative disc disease, as he called it, DDD, degenerative disc disease, which means my bones are getting malformed. So he wants to do an operation on my back to drill in there and do kind of a foundation piece to pull one of the bones back, let the nerve live again. And I guess nerves can regenerate. I didn't know that. And so hopefully my back, it's not in any pain right now. I'm just aware of it every morning when I wake up. I'm at that point in life that I'm feeling my age. Feeling my age. Just curious about you all. How many of you are 69 or older? Raise your hand, please. Look around, gentlemen. Here we are, okay? How many of you are 68 or younger? Okay, what about even? Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Just to say a few connections I have in the room. Deacon Len, I knew from St. John Paul II, formerly St. George back in the day. Tom Deddens, I knew you back at Our Lady of Sorrows. And I met Deacon Bob recently at Holy Family in Arnold. And I met you up at Troy. Dennis, is it? Yes. Dennis, I met up in Troy where I was pastor for 4 years. And then let's see, who else do I know? Gary Lang and Lynn Lang, I got to know back at Margaret Mary Alacoque, which I understand is the proper French pronunciation. Alacoque. Q-U-E is a K. So thanks. Yeah, thanks for your music this morning. That was awesome. Appreciate your enlivening us, you know. Is it Greg? Greg Lieber. I just met down at, where were we? At St. Rosa of Lima de Soto. And I've known Jane Gunther for many years, our work in charismatic renewal a little bit, and also at the lovely retreat place called Vision of Peace in Peevely, Missouri. She and I sat on the board at the same time and helped raise some money to rejuvenate that lovely retreat center. I guess what I want to do is just go over a little bit of my own history, personal and faith-wise, and kind of share with you how that's gone for me. The one song I liked a lot, in very simple theology but very profound, was The God of the Mountain and the God of the Valley. So, you know, both and, right? Both and. I'd like to tell myself, especially when I'm having a bad day or a down day, that the sun is always shining. It's always shining, whether I see it or not. That's the truth. The sun is always shining. Clouds might cover it, night might come, but the sun is still there warming us. If it were to die, we'd be dead in about 9 minutes. That's how long it takes light to get there from here, 93 million miles away. I'm Father Mike Lydon. I've been ordained a priest almost 40 years now. I was ordained by Archbishop May, for whom this room is named after, on December 15th, 1984. I was 29 years old at the time. My fellow ordinands were mostly 26. Had 3 years on them. In fact, this is the first Archbishop, Rosansky, that I'm older than. He's 66 this year. But we were ordained the same year in 84. I'm kind of a 20th century guy. I don't know about you, but the 21st century is really fast-paced and hectic, and I feel like I'm always behind, whether that's emails or other kinds of things that come at me all the time. I mean, it's wonderful in many ways, but I really prefer, I think, the 20th century. And I love history. My major at UMSL, where I graduated from in 1978, was in political science with a minor in history. And I love especially American history and especially Civil War history. I'm a big fan of who I call the secular saint, who was never baptized and never belonged to a church formally, named Abraham Lincoln. I think very highly of Lincoln for all the tough decisions he had to make, and in some ways almost feel it was godly that he was president when he was. You think our nation's divided now? It was worse then. It was worse then. My family history is a bit unusual. What I learned when I came to St. Louis in 1971, between my sophomore and junior year, was that a lot of people who are in St. Louis have been in St. Louis their whole lives. Raise your hand, please, if you've been in St. Louis your whole life. Okay. And then how many are not from St. Louis? Okay. Well, a third are not. So here's my thing. When I was born in 1955, I was 4 weeks premature, and I had the Rh negative factor. I almost died. My first week or two of life were dicey, back and forth. In fact, it was so bad that they had me baptized, confirmed, and received what was then called extreme unction, which is the sacrament of anointing. And then a Jewish doctor got to work on me. I had a double hernia at the time, too. He fixed my double hernia. I was like 4 pounds, very skinny and scrawny. I remember seeing a picture of myself. It kind of scared me. I looked like a victim of Auschwitz. It was really, I could tell that I was not healthy. So my mother swears that it was the baptism, confirmation, and extreme unction that saved me. And my dad swears it was the hands of the Jewish doctor and his skills. And a good Catholic would say both and. Okay, both and. We're not Christian scientists, okay? We believe in the power of science to the extent that it helps us work with our nature, and we believe in the power of grace, which brings us eternal life if we're open to it. So, anyway, I think that shock of me coming out of the womb early and going through those operations and not being nursed by my mother, not having skin touch with my mother, affected me very deeply. I was talking to a friend recently, he called it a pre-verbal wound. All of us have wounds, and they begin as soon as we come out of the womb. So I think that's a wound that I've carried with me my whole life. It manifests itself in different ways. I can talk to you about that one-on-one, but it's been a wound for sure. My mom is Colleen Greeley Lydon of Irish heritage. She's a lovely woman, a movie star beautiful, really. She was very, very pretty. But she was very sickly for most of her married life. My dad, Tom Lydon, was the son of Irish immigrants from County Mayo. How many of you are Irish? Any Irish in you at all? Okay, yeah. Irish Americans. We dominated the immigration scene for a while. But he is part of that great generation, mostly born between 05 and 27, something like that. Kennedy was in that generation, and Tom Brokaw wrote that book called The Greatest Generation because they endured the Great Depression, World War II, and they rebuilt this country economically. My dad was part of that generation. I don't want to idolize them, but they were quite something else. I think very different from my generation, which is the baby boomer. I think affluence in some way has spoiled us. My dad was an only child, and his only brother died early on, and he did not serve in World War II, but a lot of his colleagues did. In fact, he got a college degree in 1945, which was very unusual in those days for a man to get a college degree. And he ended up going into the coal business, COAL, the dirty business now as it's called, but he ended up being with Peabody Coal eventually here in St. Louis. You might have heard of that firm, but he had a business setback at one point, was unemployed for a while, but overall he was a success, I suppose. He was part of the executive core, and he used to call the coal business, how do you put that? No, he used to call country towns. He worked a lot in Kentucky and Indiana around these coal mines. He called country living the backbone of America. And he was in a business that fueled the whole country. And when the environmental movement really got started, my dad was very conservative politically. He was a Republican to the core. When the environmental movement was pushing coal, and he was resenting that, he said, "Let the bastards freeze in the dark," because coal fires 80% still of Missouri's power. Okay. Anyway, kind of my dad. So one of the things that happened as a result of him living, and this is another one of my core wounds in childhood. I was born in St. Paul, lived there for 4 years. Then we moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin for 2 years. Oh, hey. That's where Vince Lombardi was coach then. He was just on the ascendancy, and it was a great time to be in Milwaukee as the Packers ascended to their heights at the end of that decade. And so 3 boys, my 2 older brothers and myself, were born in St. Paul, Minnesota. My sister Kate was born in Milwaukee. In 2 years, we moved to Kansas City, Kansas, Prairie Village to be precise. And I went to grade school there, 1st through 8th grade, at St. Anne's Grade School on Mission Road. And by and large, it was a wonderful experience. I loved my Catholic grade school education. In 1969, we moved to Birmingham, Alabama for 2 years, but my dad actually got hired by Peabody at that time and moved down there to organize an office. And it was there that I learned how to love Alabama football, which I do to this day. And Bear Bryant was coach then, so another great was doing that. But in Alabama, what happened to me was I went to a public high school my first 2 years, Bear High School. Still remember it. Huge school, it was baby boom years. We had trailers out for annex for classrooms and stuff, And while I was there, Alabama was desegregating in earnest. So we had black students coming from the city, bust out to go to school with us. I didn't notice any particular tension with that, but it was unusual. I'd never been around black kids before, really, in my life. And when we moved from Kansas City to Birmingham, driving down Highway 78 through Mississippi, and people from Mississippi don't say Mississippi, they say Mississippi. They miss a syllable. I saw poverty from my car like I'd never seen before. Those rural areas in Mississippi, I saw tin corrugated shacks. I saw kids running around in rags. I saw dirt floors. And it really impacted me. I thought, this is an America I don't know. This is black, rural America in Mississippi. That kind of hit my awareness pretty strongly. Down there for 2 years, and a little faith story here. The first one I can really remember. You know, we got to make our faith our own. I mean, I went to a Catholic grade school, you may have too, but it's all just part of the culture, right? It's not like, I don't ever feel like it was that I knew Jesus personally. And so one day in biology lab, my sophomore year, my biology partner, Tommy Blankenship, still remember his name, he turned to me and said, Mike, do you know Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior? Catholics don't talk like that. So, well, Tommy, I don't know. I guess I do. I don't know. Well, you ought to come to our prayer meeting tonight. This is when the Jesus Revolution was going across America. A lot of in their young 20s and teen years were turning on not to drugs but onto Jesus. And some of the coolest kids in that school were becoming born-again Christians. Well, I didn't go. Didn't go. Couldn't quite bite then. Some of you might know how that is. You get invited and you can't quite do it. So then we moved to St. Louis in 71 between my sophomore and junior year, which is a horrible time to move. And I went to De Smet Jesuit my last 2 years. Graduated in 73. And while I was there, I decided to resent and hate having to move again. And I was a very surly, unhappy kid. Angry at the world, angry at my parents, angry at everybody else. I heard a therapist one time say that what depression is anger turned inward. Anger turned inward. So I wasn't feeling really good about myself either. I wish I had gone out for wrestling or anything. I eventually went out for golf, which is fun, sport I still play today. But it was really a lonely existence, very lonely. And but while I was at De Smet, the Jesuits gave me 3 things. And I credit this really with the school. One was an ability to think critically. And tied to that is writing well. I love to write. So that's one gift. Secondly, they gave me the gift of service my senior year to work with kids who are developmentally disabled. We used to call them mentally retarded, remember? So this whole school was developed out in West. I'd never been around kids like that in my life. It was a brand new world to me. One of the kids came running up to me during the first week, I think, wrapped his arms around me and said, I love you. I thought, oh my God, that's just so alarming. It's like, it's just too immediate, you know, but it was really a beautiful gesture on his part because they have no filter. So that really moved my heart too, regarding service. And then thirdly, I got to go on a Jesuit retreat at the White House. Maybe some of you, how many have been to White House? Anybody? Yeah, okay. So it's that beautiful vista overlooking the Mississippi River. And it was February of 73, and I really didn't get to know many kids in high school, but on that retreat, I just felt more open. I felt more, I don't know. People were friendly to me. We had some talks, and something prompted me to go to confession. Could it have been the Holy Spirit? I went to Father Appel, a chemistry teacher. If I could say this, he was a real hard ass in the classroom. Put up with no BS at all. In those days, they could hit kids and slam them up against the wall. That was his style. You know, he taught chemistry and very orderly. You know, it's a method type course. So we were all afraid of him. But in the confessional, he was like a lamb. Beautiful. I went in there and confessed my sins, and they were many. I'm a sinner. Deep down, I'm a sinner. I know that much. Went in there, I talked to him about, I was struggling with faith, didn't know whether I believed or not. Was I an agnostic, an atheist? What was I? And he just heard me out. It was like a man-to-man talk with somebody different than my dad, on a level my dad couldn't talk. Okay? And I came out of there feeling very relieved, forgiven, like a new man. I even quit smoking for 6 months because I picked up that bad habit along the way. So there's another God touch, okay? Senior year, sophomore year. Then I went to KU, University of Kansas, a beautiful campus, and I joined a fraternity. Not to my good. This was the early 70s, and it was just everything unbound. No rules, no nothing, a lot of drinking, a lot of smoking dope, a lot of having sex. Fraternity brothers, we were in it, okay, swimming in that world for a good year. And I lost myself, totally lost myself in that whole world. And I didn't have very good boundaries or very good impulse control, I guess. But after I got sick for a while, and I came home and reminisced, or rather convalesced at St. Mary's Hospital for several weeks, actually. And then I ended up going to UMSL. And I got really serious about my studies because I'm a good student. I can crank papers out, I can read, I can participate. I can't do mechanical things very well, but I could do, the intellectual stuff. So I ended up getting a really high GPA, got accepted to several law schools, thought I wanted to go to law school. But my senior year, I met a Protestant. See, the Protestants that's why I have a soft spot for Protestants. They're very important in my faith walk. I met this guy named Curtis at a bar, Creve Coeur Inn. I still remember it. And seriously, and we sat there at the bar and we started talking. He was by himself, I was by myself, and we changed stories. I said, well, tell me about yourself. He said, well, I just got released from prison. Oh, what'd you go for? I'm a burglar. I got caught. So he went to prison for several months or years, and then he came out, and he became, by Charles Colson's ministry, I think, in prison, he came out and was on fire Christian, Reformed Presbyterian. And he invited me to have lunch with him at UMSL. We talked many times around lunch. He invited me to his church in Soulard, which I went to, small little house church. But Presbyterians have a different theology than we do, but it was still kind of refreshing to be so openly Christian, if you will, or talking with somebody about that. And Curtis had a good mind. He eventually became ordained in the Reformed Presbyterian Church, I believe. Anyway, that same year, this is senior year in college, and I'm going to go to law school. I chose Mizzou to go to law school, and this calling to be a priest had been with me since second grade, off and on, here and there, here and there, here and there. It was mostly a heroic kind of admiration thing with priests. But my senior year at UMSL, I met a priest named Bill Lyons, Father Bill Lyons, who was some of you might know. How many know Bill? Anybody here know Bill? Okay, several of you, yeah. So Bill was the chaplain, priest chaplain at UMSL for years, decades. And we struck up a relationship. He played racquetball, I played racquetball. We had some great matches. And I confessed to him that I really had thought about being a priest before. He was also in the seminary doing spiritual direction. So he heard me, we went back and forth, established a good friendship, and then I went off to law school. But that senior year, what also happened was my sister was going to prayer meetings at Dorset and 270 with a guy named Ron Tucker, World Grace Outreach. Any recognize that name, Ron Tucker? Yeah. Who is that? Kathy, you do? Okay. She's out in the hall. Ron was a dynamic young man at that time, probably about my age or a little bit older even, but he had 400 people there, full of ex-Catholics, I'm sure, me among them. And my sister went first with some of the kids from her high school, St. Joe's Academy, and then my sister invited me to go with her. My dad asked me to go with her to spy on her, to see what was really going on. And so I go there, and all these kids are clapping and dancing, and Ron's preaching, and there's music like we had here, and even others, and some old Catholic tunes that they converted into Pentecostal. So the Pentecostal movement started in 1967 at Duquesne University. This is now 1978, and it's on fire. Francis McNutt was active in his ministry at that time, having prayer meetings at Visitation. Some of you might remember those if you go way back. And he was a healer. Francis was a healer, gift of healing. Anyway, so I went there, and I got really turned on to Christ and the worship and all that, and I came back really wanting to know more and commit my life to Christ. So on April 2nd, 1978, I went to a pond with my sister and this guy named Bill from the church, and I got baptized in a pond. It might have been Creve Coeur Lake. I still can't remember that detail. But I came up out of that baptism with an incredible feeling of being forgiven, being renewed, believing in God, wanting to know more about the Bible, wanting to witness to Christ and his power. And I felt saved. Yeah. So that was really a very powerful adult experience for me. But there's mountains, and then there's valleys. So the valley began when I went away to law school and just felt overwhelmed, wasn't sure if I wanted to do it. You can't go to law school that way. You got to be sharp and ready to engage the whole retinue of studies you have to do there. So I ended up quitting very early on and just working up at Columbia for the rest of the semester. And then Bill Lyons, Father Bill, invited me back to the Newman Center. I think this is off now.
It's on.
Is it on? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so Bill invited me then to work with. Bill invited me to work with him in campus ministry. He was in the habit of employing a college student as a lay minister to walk around and talk to people about Jesus, which is what I wanted to do. So we did that. I did that for 3 semesters, all the while thinking about going to the seminary and helping form a community called the Newman Center, called Salem House, which was a live-in for 3 men and 3 women in apartments across from each other down by the Normandy Wedge, not too far from Umsel. And it was there that I decided that I'd go to the seminary. Give it a try, provisionally. So I did that in 1980, the fall of 80. And then what I discovered was that what I really wanted to do, part of what I wanted to do was understand what happened to me in that born-again experience. What was going on with that? Because it's not really Catholic per se. You can't really get baptized twice. But something happened to me that was very powerful. I wanted to understand that. So I wrote my master's thesis on enthusiasm. Okay, enthusiasm. And how to determine an orthodox enthusiasm from a non-orthodox or schismatic enthusiasm. I came up with 10 different criteria to determine that. So, because there's been renewal movements throughout the church. Renewal movements are great. They enliven the church. There's also the danger of schism and heresy. Look at Protestantism. It is splintered how many times? There must be 1,000 denominations in America today. So the unity of the Catholic Church that the Pope is supposed to preserve and try to, this is off again, that's not theirs, is really part of his main charism and his job. But it's hard to do. You know this from parish life. It's hard to organize a parish in unified, especially in an era like ours is, which is joining parishes, closing parishes, new pastors in parishes. So it convinced me the apostolic authority in the church, the history of the church, its strong intellectual tradition convinced me to stay Catholic, and that's why I went to the seminary partly, to reinforce that and to become an ordained minister in the church. In the seminary, I excelled in studies, loved it. Just drank in theology like crazy. It was great. Love the community there. I keep in touch with one classmate in particular, but there's a unity that happens in the seminary that's very, very strong. And then from there, during the seminary time, this thing called Night Watch started. It involved St. Peter and Paul Church. In the basement of Peter and Paul Church that was just beginning then, their homeless shelter. So on really cold nights, myself and some other seminarians and others would go out looking in the city of St. Louis for homeless people, men, who were unhoused. So we picked them up in this van. I forgot that guy's name that was organizing this. And we went and brought them to Peter and Paul in the basement, and where they got a cot, a warmth, and something to eat. And they could stay till like 6 or 7 in the morning where they got another meal, and then were asked to leave. But a very powerful experience. So my desire to help the homeless, I think, came out of something that was impelling me, and I still have a keen interest in that issue. In Jefferson County, we have a big homeless population. I'll talk more about that in a bit, but that was something that happened to me there in the seminary. So, also in the seminary, this is really cool too. Anybody here work in a food pantry? Okay, so a former priest named Henry Lysing, ordained in 1967, helped to form a nonprofit called Operation Food Search. Yeah, still going on. He employed some seminarians with him during field ed to go out and ask Schnucks and Dierbergs and others to give us food, to help put food in food pantries. He helped get a law passed in Jefferson City called the Good Samaritan Law, which excused grocers from liability if they gave food to us. So the grocery industry, apparently, if one bottle of ketchup is broken in a case of 24, they throw the whole thing away. So we said, no, let's throw the one away and we'll take the 23 and you're not liable in case anything happens. Great law. An example of social action on behalf of the poor that's still with us today. So that convinced me of the power of the gospel and that it can be put into practical use to help those who were in need. I had some great diaconate assignments or acolyte was at Holy Family with Father Paul Zipfel, and I had diaconate at Resurrection with Father Charlie Forrest, a wonderful guy. And my first assignment as a priest was then at Immaculata, a part of the wealth belt of St. Louis County, not too far from the Annunziata, which is really in the wealth belt of St. Louis County. Traditional old Catholic money. But there I got to know some people of means, which would serve me later on. I left there in 2.5 years thinking I wanted to teach at Bishop DuBourg High School, which is where I went. I love teaching. And went down to Margaret Mary Alacoque for 2.5 years, where I lived and then worked at Bishop DuBourg. Then moved to Our Lady of Sorrows, where I know Tom from, and lived there for 5.5 years, a wonderful assignment with Father Jack Dempsey and Father Jack Seifert and Father Jimmy Holland. We had a great house there. I mention these names because some of you might know these guys. Anyway, worked at DuBourg then. Then I got moved and asked to be moved to Pius V Parish on beautiful South Grand in the middle of the Vietnamese. A lot of Vietnamese were here then because our country gave Army officers of South Vietnam permission and means to come over here to live safe from the North Vietnamese who had taken over. This is now 1990. Yes, 1995. And they've been in this country about 15 years. We met some wonderful Vietnamese. We had African immigrants down there. Of course, we had a cadre of traditional Anglo parish parishioners as well. Small parish, struggled like crazy for school, and means and all that, but very diversified. One of the proudest moments in my priesthood came when Maureen DePriest, who's now the primary school superintendent, and I helped to form Cabrini Academy, which is a small school, very diverse, arguably the most diverse in the St. Louis Archdiocese, at St. Wenceslaus, a 9-hour away from St. Francis de Sales, okay? So we formed that. It's still going on today. I'm very proud of that work that we did. We put 2 schools together, and that carries on to this day. I love to network. So networking for me means this. Go to those who have resources, get their resources, and bring them to those without, and have them work together in a relationship. Then, after my stint at Pius V, where I was for 11 years, I went back to Bishop DuBourg as the Vice President for Faith Formation, fancy term for campus minister and teacher. And eventually I became the president there for 6 years. And president basically means chief fundraiser. So, any DuBourg grads here? DuBourg grads, one, there's one, okay.
St. Mary's.
Oh, I love to hate St. Mary's. Oh.
Shove those wooden shoes up dark places.
We love to hate St. Mary's at DuBourg High School. But I know Father Mitch Doyen pretty well. He was the president there for years, too. So God bless St. Mary's and Rosati Kane and all the others. I was there for 13 years then. That's where I met Paul and his son, sitting up here at St. Dominic Savio. And eventually when we became John Paul II, I met you, Len, and some others right here in Afton. And those were good years. It was a good community. I enjoyed my time there at Bishop DuBourg, but I was getting tired of raising funds after about 6 years. So I asked if I could go back into parish ministry. And while at DuBourg, another accomplishment I'd like to cite, just because a priest doesn't have kids, we can't brag about our kids or grandkids, so we brag about our projects and our history. If you've ever been to Bishop DuBourg, you'll note that in the gym, it was built in the mid-century, 1950s, it had 646 glass panels as the ceiling, as the roof. And from the beginning, when it snowed in the gym too. When it rained in the gym too. It was not, and it got worse and worse and worse and worse. So when your cousins were there, McCloskey, we decided to put on a new roof. Cost $775,000, which I got to raise. So raising that much money is difficult, especially with an alumni that's not as developed as St. Mary's is. So we did that, and we built that, that ceiling as well as a new thing out front, a new walkway. Anyway, all that to say, Archbishop Carlson called me, and I remember it was at DeBerg in another person's office, and he said, Mike, I want you to go to, where do I want him to go to again? He's talking to somebody else. Get a bunch of changes or everything. Oh yeah, Sacred Heart in Troy. I said, Archbishop, where's Troy? I've never heard of Troy before. Lincoln County. Lincoln County. North and northwest of St. Charles County. Okay. So I said, well, okay, never been rural before. Let's see what this is. So I went up there and basically had the time of my life. I loved Sacred Heart. Love Sacred Heart. It's got a full functioning grade school. It's a full-size parish, full service, 1,200, 1,500 families, something like that. Staff was wonderful. People were great. You know, people in the country or rural areas, it's also kind of suburban too, but they're just more down to earth and wholesome. There's something that's wholesome about them. Yes, sir.
Quick question. When you were at DeBerg, did you ever call on Jack Dorsey?
Yeah, we tried to several times. He actually spoke at one of our graduations, but never gave a nickel. However, his family, that's Jack's choice, but his family did. And I've heard that he's been giving back to St. Louis in different things in different ways, maybe even one to Catholic Charities. I'm not sure about that. I need to check into that. But he didn't have a good experience at DeBerg. He graduated in 95. But Rex Sinkfeld gave, if you know that name. He's a pretty wealthy guy. Anyway, that being said, I went to Troy as pastor and really enjoyed it a ton. And I got to know a lot of new people. But here's the story about the Holy Spirit and also about homelessness. So there's this one woman up there named Jenna, and the head of the Vincent de Paul is named Chris, and his wife Leslie. And one day Jenna was traveling along Highway 47 by 61, and she saw a homeless man bent over like this who was begging money, which often happens at that exit there. And so she felt, a little Catholic guilt and decided to give him, whatever she had. It wasn't much because she doesn't use cash because she's a younger person. And I don't use cash anymore. So, but that touched her heart. Went back in. She found him a couple days later, and God said, a mystical voice, God said to her, feed him. So she gave him some more money. Third time she goes back, same guy, bent over. She gives him a little money, and she heard the voice say, feed and house all of them. All of them. Her story is in one of these things for the ACA and other things too. So I'm still getting goosebumps when I say that story. So went back to the Vincent de Paul and worked with Chris and Leslie, and we formed a committee, and we decided that we wanted to try to build a crisis emergency center for the unhoused in Troy, for those who wanted to get out of homelessness, because some homeless people don't want to get out, whether that's because of mental illness, drug addiction, or some other issue. So we worked like hell for 3 years, put a committee together, networked. Now get this. Here's some things that came together. Lincoln County is run by 3 commissioners. One of them is a former drug addict to opioids who's recovered. He took it during a convalescence for pain. Lincoln County, along with many other counties in the state of Missouri, won $1.3 million in an opioid case. The county council eventually decided to give us, Bridge of Hope, $800,000 in a piece of land right next to the health department, away from residences, because, NIMBY, not in my backyard. We built a 6,000 square foot building. Bridge of Hope just opened on April 1st. It can house up to 24 or 40 people, men and women and families. It's split down the middle. Catholic Charities came forward, gave us compensation for an executive director, and the whole thing, about 150K. Program director, about 120K. ACA gave us 50 grand. Incarnate Word Foundation gave us 85 grand. And several others stepped up. Compass Health, Mercy Health, all came. And these were falling like dominoes as we were raising money to open this thing. It was incredible. I'd never seen anything like that in my life. It almost made raising money easy. So, was that the Holy Spirit or what? That's a really, and so that's my other accomplishment up there in Troy, was this emergency shelter. Incredible. And it wasn't dependent on me. It was a lay board, ecumenical lay board, that put this together, and they still govern it today. All based on a mystical vision. Isn't that cool? I just love that story. So then, having gotten that together, then in March of 23, as I'm sitting in Flint Hill, St. Theodore's in Flint Hill at a deanery meeting, I get a phone call from Archbishop Brzezinski, which I heard he was going to be calling me. So I get up, go out of the meeting, go outside. Yes, Archbishop? Mike, good to catch you. Like you to consider this new governance I'm doing, creating 3 vicariates, and you'd be one of the 3 vicars. I've never heard of that. We don't do that in St. Louis. So he's from Baltimore, and that's the way they govern Baltimore, the archdiocese, so in vicariates. And so it was a really hard decision. I prayed about it for a good week. I thought my expectation was that I would retire at Troy because the previous pastor was there for 17 years. The one before him was there for 15 years. So I thought, well, I go up there at age 60. What was I then? 67? How old was I then? In 2019, I was 64. I thought, well, I'll just do this for 11 years. I'm 75, I retire. That's my total expectation. And then, whoop, this happens. So I prayed about it and thought about it, cried about it a lot. And then, our first inclination as diocesan priest is to obey the bishop. You're inclined to do his will, in which is wrapped God's will. So I didn't know why he chose me. I could think of 10 priests off the top of my head who would be better at it than me. And I ended up saying yes. And the twin rotator cuffs, as I call them, of this style of governance is evangelization on the one hand and social outreach on the other, helping the poor and vulnerable. Now, maybe you heard about what I did up there with that group that helps establish the food pantry. I don't know. We had a great evangelization workshop up there with Tammy Chumley at one point. Marvelous thing. 120 people came to it. It was really good. But he chose me, so I said yes. And then from April to July, I was getting ready. Lots of meetings at Regali Center. Oh my gosh, it's a 55-minute drive from Troy to Regali down to here. So I did a lot of those. I was on the personnel board too at the time, the president of the personnel board, and we were reassigning guys, 150 different assignments, I think, or 120, something like that. 27 guys were retiring. It was just such a salad mix of things. So we muddled our way through it. And so now I'm the vicar for the southern region, or the Episcopal vicar for the southern vicariate, as they call it. Our territory extends this way, from Sacred Heart and Valley Park all the way over to Queen of All Saints. There's 7 parishes there. The most stable, prosperous parishes in the vicariate are those 7. South of that, Jeffco. Imperial is there with St. Joseph Imperial, and that's a monster parish, and humming along. South of that is St. Genevieve County, and St. Genevieve's the monster there. And then south of that is Perry County, with St. Vincent's and Perry County being a monster there. Coming up the other side, Washington County, where it's the poorest county in the Archdiocese of St. Louis, and it is poorer than the city of St. Louis. It's rural poverty. And Potosi Old Mines are there. And then up from that a little bit north of that is St. Francis County, or St. Francois, where Farmington is. Okay, so that comprises our vicariate. So guess what my job is? Well, not exactly, thank goodness. What I've learned is I'm not a revenue center, I'm a cost center, which means that, for lack of a better thing, I'm sucking off the teat of the archdiocese, okay? I raise no money. That's not my job. But I take money. All my salaries, I got a staff of about 10 people. Most of them are here at Regali. 3 are with me down there. My job, as I'm starting to see it on the social front, is to employ the resources of those northern parishes, have them supply, Greg, the poorer parishes down below, especially Potosi, where we just had a major victory. I want to describe it for you. This is what I'm talking about. This is in Washington County. Potosi is just a podunk town, obviously poor. There's one pregnancy resource center there called Caring Hearts. It's open 3 days a week. We learn through our networking that they're going to go out of business in October probably this year. So we decide to help them amplify their resources. I guess this is raising money, but it's more connections to the Archdiocese. So I talk to the ACA. Mary Varney talks to the Respect Life Apostolate. Catholic Charities talks to their donors. We end up ACA grant of 25 grand, Respect Life of 5 grand, and a brand new ultrasound machine which cost $58,000. And there's just went pedunk at Caring Hearts. They just celebrated this last Thursday down at this really lovely place in Potosi, and now she's up and running for another good year and has an ultrasound machine. Because women who see an ultrasound of their baby in their womb, 75 or more % choose against having the abortion. So we did that in Washington County. Just an example of what, and really, my staff carried this whole ball, all 4 of them. Respect Life, Catholic Charities, Marie Kenyon, they carried the ball. Brian Thuvino of Catholic Charities. It's a beautiful thing. So our job is to be catalysts to help the rich give to the poor or help employ them also bodily to help it. Our next project is going to be to have a second lunch in Arnold at the Salvation Army in Arnold. They have 1 lunch a week for the homeless and the unhoused. On Tuesdays, we want to establish a Thursday lunch. So my job is not, I guess it's raising money. My job is to go around and talk to Knights of Columbus groups and parishes to see if they'll kick in some bucks and volunteers to help staff a second lunch there. One of my staff members is very involved with doing evangelization groups in all the parishes, to try to rev them up. Here's the thing, and I'll stop with this because my time's almost out. Tammy Shumley does this, but Jennifer Meehan is the woman on my staff who does this. Can you create a 3 to 5 minute salvation history story of yourself and your walk of faith in 3 or 5 minutes? Say it in a compelling, descriptive way, so when somebody asks you, why do you believe, you're ready to answer. 1 Peter says, give reasons for your hope. You got your reasons for your hope lined up? Okay. So when your kids or grandkids, a lot of whom are no longer with faith or the church, ask you why you believe, you'll be ready. Great anguish in all of our hearts how much that generation has fallen away and the generation afterwards, right? They don't practice. The culture's got them. So we're entering an apostolic age. We're no longer Christendom. We can't rely on the culture to help us with this. Apostolic age, we got to gird our loins, find focus, and go forward talking to people about why we believe. One last thing, then I'll shut up. Seek Conference would happen in January of this year down at the, what was that, the Dome, or where was that? America Center, thank you. Full of young people, right? Focus stands for Fellowship of Catholic University Students. Focus. 20,000 kids down there, university kids, who are fired up about their Catholic faith and want to spread the gospel. Great shot in the arm to us olders who see so many falling away. But that's going to be the future of our church. I'd even say not so much parishes, although some parishes, but fifth column things are to help save our church. You know, if we have like retreat programs, CHIRP and ACTS, any number of things. Extra communities like this one. Extra communities outside of the parish can help rejuvenate us because sometimes the parish is moribund or not very active. I had a confirmation at Our Lady's Thursday night. I got to tell you, lovely as it was, and the kids were a little frightened to get confirmed. You know the story. Nobody sang. Nobody except the choir. What the heck is that? We could have blown the roof off that church if everybody sang. Nope. Because as part of the Catholic culture ethic, I think, is that we don't sing. Not en masse anyway. I mean, Sacred Heart was one of the best singing parishes when I got there I'd ever seen, but think about it. We need and praise and worship, and that's the core. I mean, if we don't have that. So anyway, I'm just saying, in many ways, we're a church in crisis. And this evangelization / social outreach by Archbishop Rosansky is meant to be stirring up life in the hinterlands. Not Regali, but down there in Festus, out there in St. Charles, in Scott's, I think he's at Epiphany, and St. Roch's. So we're not Regali. We're pushing Regali out to the hinterland to help serve the people and to rev them up for faith. Okay? Good to be with you all. Thanks. Okay.